Hello, I'm Phil Villette, and this is another episode of the DailyLessonLearn.com, the video series. This is episode 2, beginning test-driven development. For this demonstration, I'm going to be building out a couple of features in a bank notification system. We're going to make some assumptions about this notification system, that it already has a feature to opt in for each notification type, where you can select one or many ways to receive each type of notification. Two things we're going to use are email and text message, and we're actually not going to place much importance on the types right away, or even in this demonstration. What we are going to do is implement the feature notify when account balance drops below a certain amount, and weekly notification of account balance. And we have I have a little bit of an architecture in mind here. This is a little bit of upfront design, which if you really adhere, if you take TDD literally, some people take it to mean that you do no upfront design, but even the major proponents of TDD do upfront design and say they do upfront design. So one of the two features I'm going to implement is we're implementing these in an architecture where systems are making explicit calls to services to send notifications. You can think of this as a microservice architecture without the event bus, or without a pub sub, just to make things a little bit simpler for the demonstration. It doesn't matter either way. We just assume that we're going to have some method that notifies when the balance is low, and just that's the entry point within the service or API, and kind of takes care of everything from there. And the notify weekly summary. We're going to assume that something's already figured out that the balance is low and is telling the notification system strictly to send the notifications. Its responsibility is to look up the types of notifications that the receiver wants to receive, whether it's text or email or both, builds those notifications and sends them. The notification settings are stored in a database that are accessed by both the notification system and a separate interface. Let's say the account settings for the user. Maybe there's some backend system that also allows service personnel to manage those account settings, those notification settings. So we're going to be accessing that shared database. The difference is the notification system only needs to read from those to get the settings. Although we may have some write capabilities, such as how many times this user was notified, whether notifications succeeded or failed, would be written in a different database, and we're not going to concern ourselves with that during this demonstration. So I have this solution just to get things started. In order to add a test project, we're going to add a new project to the solution. It's going to be a test project under Visual C#. We're going to be using Visual C# instead of some of the other languages that interact with .NET. And what we're going to do is call this project notification system.tests. I like to postfix with .tests for all of the testing projects. You can choose whatever format you like, but you would maybe do whatever format you use. Just continuing on. And so immediately, if you've ever seen any demonstrations about this, it adds a test class in there for you, decorated with an attribute called test class and a method called method. We're going to rename this. And well, this is going to be our first feature. Notify low balance tests. the way that I like to do it is to have a class per method. This is the notify low. This is going to be the notify low balance method, and various tests that we're going to use to notify of a low balance. Maybe one test we want to perform is when no notification methods are set, do not send notification. Obviously, because we can't. Let's take another case. So we're just going to look at different ways when email is set. Oh, this will be email only. Send email only. We want to make sure that we sent the email. And some people might say that it should be a separate test case to say that we haven't sent anything else, but I'm going to go with keeping it a little more simple. One reason for that is when you have so many methods within one class, it becomes more and more difficult to read, so I like to keep things a little bit more minimal. And eventually what I really like to do is to get to one test method and define those test cases in a data-driven way. But without the proper structures in place, we're just going to go ahead and get started with this. Send text only. Okay. On email and text. Send both email and text. Okay. We can always rename these or refactor them as needed. And what we need to do from this point is define some kind of a system under test. This might be going a little too far. One thing we can even start with is a bool was notification sent, send notify low balance. See, it wants to do that, but what I really want to do here is create low balance data. Data equals new low balance data. I don't really know what that contains yet, but I do know that I want to pass it into that method. What I'm starting with is just creating the methods in the classes right here in the test project, and eventually I'll move them out into their own library and into their own project. But I'm not quite to that point yet. The reason I like to do this is because you would have to bounce back and forth between classes and libraries and files and things like that. It just makes things a lot quicker to do them right here within the same file as your test, and just kind of get your implementation details sorted out. And at some point, it'll become complex enough to have to move it out of this project and into another project. And usually when that happens, usually the time is right when you have to start adding references that have nothing to do with the test classes and nothing to do with the system under test, which in this case is the notify low balance. And eventually we'll move this into something. Eventually this will start taking shape, but I really like to start with what we need, with only what we need here. And I apologize, this one is false. Was notification sent. There we go. That's our first low balance data. This is our first instance of the common arrange, act, assert that used to be in the boilerplate that they would set up for you. And since everyone now knows it, they've taken it away and are now keeping things simpler. Everyone's kind of used to, well, maybe not everyone, if you're watching this, you should be actually learning a lot from these various setups. But so there's another, besides arrange, act, assert, there's another format which is becoming more popular given when then, and this comes from the syntax called the Gherkin syntax, which is a business requirements language. It's written in plain text and interpreted into methods, and at some point in time within the TDD series of videos, I will get around to some tools that are useful in .NET for doing BDD style testing, but at this point we're just going to focus on unit tests and using TDD to implement our lower lying methods. One thing we're really going to need is whether or not, well, I guess we'll eventually need that, but at this point what we're going to do is assume that we have null as our first case. Now we could have a bunch of methods in here that say when data is null, react this way, and it can get very cumbersome to have every single case written into separate methods. But what I'm going to do is test this once to make sure that I can handle null. Obviously at this point it won't. And what I did there was I just pressed Control R and then T without Control to run the test. That's one of the shortcuts for running the test. And of course we know it's not implemented. If it was implemented, we return false. Simply return false to make the test pass. Okay, but that doesn't really prove anything. We made this test pass. But the goal isn't to make the test pass. The goal is to make this notify a low balance if the user was set up. And the only way right now to know whether the user is set up is to say low balance data, and I'm sorry, the account number equals, let's say, 1. And we don't know what the account, maybe we do know what the account number format is already, but at this point I'm just going to call it an integer. Now what I did there is Control period brings up that context menu to add properties, to implement methods and other things like that. It's really one of the fastest ways to get things moving as you're creating your interface and wanting to do some implementation during that process. One of the things we want to do is to load the account data associated with that account number. What I would say is probably we really just want to get notification methods for low balance alert equals, well, this is just going to be empty. Sort of have a problem here is now we have to get this into here. So let's just go ahead and pop it out into the pop it out as a class member rather than a local variable to the test method. Well, how do we actually set this up? We can set this up here. We'll start off with that as a null. Set it up in our method. Notify low balance alert. We're going to get the okay, still returning false, satisfies our test here. So it's not really a very effective test at this point. But we don't want to, at this point I don't really want to get too far into the implementation details. So let's go ahead and let's just move down. This part here isn't really important to the test itself. It's just defining the account number. So I'm just going to move it again. I'm just going to move it into the class members so that other things can access it. It's not important to this test. What is important to this test is this guy here. So let's just move on to the next test because now we need something here. Email. And when we say, is notification sent? Assert dot, and we could just say, actually, it's true. Was notification sent? And now, of course, we can see that that's going to fail because we're only returning false. So now we have two cases. I'm going to move this down. And if you've watched my last video, the episode 1, you'll know that some of the shortcuts I'm using for moving methods and things like that are in that video. There are several other shortcuts and things like that. So if you haven't watched it, please go back and watch that after you watch this video. You'll see some of those techniques I'm using right here. Okay, so now we have this case where it's failing when we have an email in here. So what we want to do is make this pass. Yes. Contains. And we'll see what that is in a minute. So if it contains email, this is not good code yet. So for a while, the code's not going to be very good. But as long as it does what it's supposed to do. Okay. So there. And we set send text only. Okay. So I suppose what we could do here is email. We'll just make this the easiest thing to make it pass. Okay, if it has an email or a text. And I'm just going to do a little quick copy this and paste that there. Syntax only. Let's run the test. See if it passes. Okay. Now we haven't really verified that it's only sending an email and only sending text, so that's kind of a problem for us right now. Was notification sent doesn't give us an idea of what kind of notification was sent. So I think what we need to do is create some kind of a structure here to answer those questions. Let's see. Notification, send results. Maybe we'll make it notify low balance results. Doesn't need to be public right now. But we'll make it public. Okay, so of course that's going to be a problem, but we don't want it to be parameterless anyways. We want it to be bool email sent was text sent. Yeah. And well, let's do another shortcut here. Prop tab bool. I could make this just a simple data structure, but maybe I'm going somewhere else with it. I don't know yet. Okay. I'm going a little too far with this right now. Implementation that we really want. Result. This text sent. Assert is false. So was email sent. And we'll just reverse that for the reverse that for this guy. Is false. Is true. Of course, we need to say this is not a result. We'll just do a bar there. It's cleaner, easier to read. If you want to know what type it is, just hover. It'll show you. Okay. In some cases, it makes sense to have an explicit type here, but in this case, usually I'll start with an explicit type if, for example, I didn't have this in place already. I'll show you actually how that works. If I don't have that class in place already, let's just do this. It defaults to class, so let's let that be a class. There we go. And easy enough to generate with control period. Okay, and in this case, and in our first case, both should be false. Okay. Now we have the wrong thing here. This will be easier. The reason I wanted to make this a struct was so that I didn't have to worry about a null result. So I'm going to change this to a struct. Okay. And what you can't do this one doesn't care about that. Interesting. So the assertion language allows you to check null against a struct. But in the case of the equal operator, you can't check that. So let's see what it does in the case of but equals allows it because equals can be implemented in a different way. Okay. In any case, you can't return null. Because it won't allow it. So that'll give us some benefit. It's a non-nullable type value. Okay. So now we for sure have a result. Was email sent, was text sent. We're not actually sending yet, but that's coming down the road. So let's just make sure, well, let's go ahead and make sure all of our cases still pass here. How about that? Okay, great. And now, of course, we don't have any assertion in this last case, but we can easily have an assertion here. I'm not going too far with designing something that gives us different types here, because it's frankly not that important yet. What is important is that we're getting some kind of a structure in place inside of this notify load balancer method, and we're starting to figure out what we really need out of in terms of data coming into this. Okay. Now let's see. Oh, let's just fire that off. Okay, this failed because this false failed. Well, we're supposed to send both. We're supposed to send both email and text because we have both here. So this should be true. All right, there we go. Okay, now there's no dependency on this account number so far, which I'm not too thrilled with because we're not really looking up the settings by account number. So I'd really like to be doing that. So let's go ahead and start defining some things to make sure that our notification settings, when we have certain account numbers, are being fetched the right way, or are actually coming back as we expect them to. So I guess what I need to do is define something to contain the account number. Let's say we have let's see here. Maybe we'll have 3 accounts, one set up for email, one set up for text, one set up for text and email. Okay, yeah, let's do that. And so rather than this just returning null, what we can do is turn this into a func that takes in an int and returns an array of strings. And we'll say get application methods. Okay. Okay, so now that takes in an int account number. I'm using a lambda here to define this, and I'll just go ahead and I could do this some different ways. I have three cases. Account number, default, turn, so we'll say that 1, return SBR email. Let's do this. Okay. Return value. So we're not returning from directly within a case statement. Okay, case 2. I'm just stubbing this out. This will eventually read something from, this will eventually read from a database or some kind of a talking and typing. This will eventually make its way in as a method that reads the data that we need from some sort of a persistent store that database is very likely what it's going to read from. But it could be calling out to maybe a service that accesses the data through some well-defined API. We don't really care about the details of how it's accessed right now. There may already be something in place that fits our purposes. But we're concerned more with implementing our notify load balance method and making sure that it does all of the right things first. So that's really what I'm going to focus on here. And I can take this func and we can scrap this. We don't want this anymore. Our data is going to tell us what we need. Okay. Eventually we'll do some things with this. But first, account number, do the same here. Well, this is a little redundant. Let's make this easier. Move this up to make it a little bit easier here. And we'll take notification methods and just swap this in here. Okay. So let's go ahead and, well, they're all going to be, let's run our tests right now and see what happens. One of them is going to pass. We're not quite there yet because we're not sending in the right account numbers for each of these. Let's go ahead and do that now. Our email only, account number 1, none is account number 3. Account number text only is account number 2. Oh, wait, no, not 3. Not 3 for this one. 4. They have nothing set up. It's not explicit, but it's okay for now. All right. And now I don't think we need this anymore because we're not using it. Is that true? We have a red mark here if that was true. Okay. Kind of tells you where the errors are. Context. Look at that. All pass. There we go. Okay. Now we have some rough etchings of some get notification methods or settings or something. We don't need much more than that right now, so let's stick with that. I'm not focusing too much on implementation details. So the simple fact that these contain that it doesn't really tell us whether it was sent or not. So it just says whether or not the methods have that. I'm not really keen on that yet. We still want these tests to pass no matter what we do as we go forward from here. We have something stubbed out down here. Let's go ahead and create another one of these funcs for send notification. And then I guess what we'll do is we'll do something like if the notification setting contains email, we'll go ahead and send email. And this will take in, well, we don't know what it'll take in yet, but it'll return bool. And this will be called send email. Return bool. So it takes in nothing, and well, return true. We'll do send email or false. Oh, return true. Okay. Same thing, I guess, with send email. We'll just do send notification. And same thing here, or false. Okay. I'm thinking this probably won't scale well, but for now, we only have the two methods. We can always refactor it a bit later with making it a little more data-driven. So let's go ahead and run this now. Okay, so same thing, but we're not really saying for sure whether or not this actually passed. We're just sort of shortcutting everything and just saying, okay, if we have this, return true, but it doesn't really give us exactly what we want to know. So let's do something else. Let's put a bool here. Email sent is false. Let's do this a different way. Email sent equals true. Return true. Of course, this needs to be static. Okay. One of the problems with this, and I imagine this is going to happen. One of the problems with this is that we're going to run into an issue where these are static, but these tests run in parallel. So we can't exactly rely on doing things this way with this whole static, as long as we have this func here that's accessing the static value here. So the way that we can get around that, we're going to create a class here. Notification sender, well, let's call this emailer. Emailer. Texter. And what we really want to do with each of these is to symbol, send notification. Send the notification. Turn true. Same thing. Texter. Send that text. Okay. Really, I mean, this is... Okay. This is the same thing. Except now it's not static. Email sent, true. You know, I feel like I'm cheating a little bit here, so let me just back up a step. I actually want to know, I actually want this to, I want this to fail, just so that we can actually see that. When things are running in parallel like that. Okay, so instead of taking the result here, text sent, email sent. Let's replace that with mistake. We want to find and replace this with text sent. Okay. And the email sent, we want to find and replace email sent. Okay. Thread safety aside, what we want to do is when notify load balance happens, we're going to send notification. Well, in this case, if we have an email here, we're going to send the email, which is going to set that static variable syntax. Set the static variable. Okay, it's these guys here. We could potentially just... Okay, let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens. Are they going to pass, fail? Sometimes pass, sometimes fail. Yeah. What happened? Email sent, text sent. What happened? They were just passing. So let's see. Let's try this a different way. Let's try it again. We'll get different results, I think. Maybe. Maybe not. Am I setting something wrong? Text sent, email sent, both false. What if we do this? Let's reorder these tests. Now this is a big no-no where the tests pass or fail depending on the order, where states pass has to be passed between tests. So I must be doing something wrong here, besides setting up the static. syntax. That all seems right to me. Well, we know that it's the fact that we're using static here, and that we're running these tests in parallel. Test Explorer. Okay. And when you run the test, these two keep failing. I kind of expect that they're going to randomly fail in different orders, but that just doesn't seem to be the case. Maybe they're being run in alpha. Yes. Okay, let's see here. Let's go back to, for these, let's go back to result. It's text sent. Result is email sent. Just for that one. See, that passed. Let's run this one by itself. It passed. Now I'm running it. No, when the cursor's outside of the test method and I hit Control-RT, it runs all the tests within that class. If I were outside of the class, it would run all the tests within the assembly. So whatever scope your cursor is in, that's the scope of the tests that are run. Well, look, it's passing here when it's run by itself. So that's how we know that we have an issue with our static variables. So let's go ahead and get rid of all of this so that we don't accidentally use it. And then we're going to see that we have some compilation errors. That's fine. What we really want to happen here is we want to pass in emailer or texter, and we want an instance of an emailer or a texter for each of these, so that we're not using globals. Emailer equals new emailer. Okay. Texter equals new texter. Now this is okay, but how do we get this into notify load balance? Maybe what we could do is, I don't know, have an emailer. I mean, this seems a little bit like where it's fragile. Texter. This is a little fragile. I don't really like this. I kind of feel like it's time to make a class and put this into notifier, because we don't really know whether we need email or a text or what kind of thing we need here. So I guess we could go ahead and do the emailer dot send notification. But the problem with that is the emailer is being created by the thing that uses it, and now I really don't have a way of verifying that the email was actually sent through that emailer. So what I really want to do is I want to have a little bit more control of this emailer. I want to build the emailer. I want to build the emailer here, and I want to pass it into my notifier. Emailer, texter. There. Well, we can do something else with this, but let's go ahead and, oh, see, this is what I like doing, is just creating my new object and calling a constructor that doesn't exist. because you can do control period and it will generate the constructor. Not only will it generate the constructor, but it will put in those private values for you. So, oh, we also need this. We also need to pass this in. Okay, well, let's go ahead and pass this in too. Poor guy can't get to the same thing. Generate the constructor. It does nice things. We'll do that. And now we can use the emailer sent, confirmed sent maybe, confirmed sent or was sent. Yeah, let's call it was sent. That's fine. Was sent. Texter was sent. Inaccessible due to the protection level. That's fine. It's private because we had it private before. Now we'll make it public. Now I want to take, this is really emailer, and this is really texter. Send notification. Notify low balance. Okay, so we have our low balance data. I'll go to that because it's internal, not public. There we go. And the results. Low balance data. Normally I can press F12 and go straight to the definition of this. But, oh, yep, because I have some issue with the lock, the way I press F12, it's not working. Okay, I'd like to have these with underscores anyways. And I don't like having this, and we're not, okay, there we go, there. That'll work. Setting it to itself essentially. We don't need this anymore, so I'm using Alt, doing box highlighting to get rid of this, just to clean everything up. Okay, what's sent? Turn sent. Return. Oops. Text sent. Looks like I'm doing some duplication here. Okay. And we don't have that there yet. This. Fix that with that. Okay, why does it want this? Assigned, but its value is never used. Yes, it is. Okay. Now what? Okay. Now we have to copy all this stuff all over the place. I don't really like doing that. What I'd really like to do is, we don't have to build this every single time. We just have to, we do need access to the texter and the emailer. So we do have to build those within every method. Pass them into this, notify low balance. These are all implementation details. We don't care much about those, but we do care about this account number. So let's go ahead and do an account number. I'm typing this on purpose this time. Normally I would just put var here, but there's a reason why I'm doing this. If I if I just go ahead and highlight this and do control period and extract method, now we're kind of locked into the number 2, and I don't want that. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to flip this, put this account number in there. Now it's going to give me the right thing. It's going to say, there we go, okay, execute system under test. Okay. Now we have a way to exercise our system under test. We're passing in things that matter and things that don't matter. Well, the things that matter from within this method that have to be created new because of stateful behaviors, because we're going to check state on this in the end. And we're passing in things that aren't stateful. Okay. Now what I need to do is I'm going to have to copy all of these things. This is account number 4, and we want texter was sent and email was sent to all of these. Okay. Boy, I've changed these so many times within these assert is true. I almost want to say, I almost want to have a method that does this, but that's okay. That's okay for now. Text. Email was sent. We'll get to fixing the other stuff in a little bit. Okay, execute, and all of this. This was account number 1. Account number 3. Let's see how that goes. 2 there. Let's move this to the bottom. This is just details. We don't need to focus on details. When somebody comes into here for the first time to see what's going on, you just kind of want to see what's going on without the details. One thing we could probably stand to do is to move these account numbers to the top. However, we're violating a principle about magic numbers here, so we'll fix it a different way. Let's make sure all these tests pass when we run all of them in parallel. 2, 3, 4, all pass. Great. I may go ahead and make that one of the Friday challenges on the dailylessonlearn.com. I've been putting out coding challenges every Friday, so look for those on the blog. And again, this has been the dailylessonlearn.com, the video series, episode 2, beginning test-driven development.